All right, so we are gonna do. So I didn't get to see the second one again, but I have seen Funny Games. For the longest time, I kept thinking you were saying Funny People, and then when I was like, wasn't Funny People that Adam Sandler movie? And I was getting ready to watch it, and I typed it in. I was like, okay, Funny People. I was like, this is not the movie. I was like, oh, thank
No,
goodness,
that's
because
a
I did not like
seriously
them.
different movie.
I was like, I did not like that movie, the Seth Rogen movie. It
Why
was
does
dumb.
David think that's so dark and
Yeah.
intellectual?
There's no blood at all. Why would David like this? Um, so I did see the old one. I did see all of it. I have seen the new one with Naomi Watts, but I didn't see it recently, so I don't remember like some of the differences. So let's talk about the first one, and then
I can help. I can help you with this. It's very little differences.
Okay, yeah. So then, if you want to talk about the remake after that, we can go into that. But it just won't be a purely fair
Yeah,
comparison.
I watched the remake and you watched the original. I watched the original a couple weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Potty break, coffee break.
You need a coffee, my friend?
I would like a coffee, my
Good.
friend.
I'll just grab myself some agua.
Agua, okay. All right.
15 minutes later.
Oh, shit. That was a 16-minute break. Shit.
Yeah.
All right, all right. You just don't say.
Your French press and all that.
It's only the fanciest. All right, no, it was all normal press on a cheap machine. Shit was overflowing hot, boiling coffee into my hands. All right, I will sip away in between. All right, so on to segment 2, we are gonna start a new type of segment here that for a working title, it's called "You Watch, Me Watch, We Watch." And I will suggest a movie for David one week to watch or rewatch, depending on David's seen like tons of movies already. And the following week, David will suggest a movie for me to watch, and that'll definitely be a chore because I just don't get around to seeing a lot of movies. I really struggle to get like my 3 for my films of the week. But so this week, David started us off with Funny Games from 1997, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a quick? This is a spoiler review from here on Listen at Your Own Risk. There you go.
All right,
Does
funny.
that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Listen at your own risk? That sounds stupid.
Yeah.
Whatever. Whatever, you know what I'm saying. Go ahead.
Well, Funny Games is directed. It's an Austrian film directed by the legend Michael Haneke. So this film, the basic plot is this is a home invasion film. But what this film does, it kind of destroys all the tropes of thriller and horror films, in particular American films. So a family, it's a father, mother, son, and dog, are taking a trip to their vacation home, where they meet a couple of teenagers who come over, and they seem like they're nice young guys. They saw them over there with their neighbors and friends. They come over and they ask for a few eggs. And it turns out that their intentions were pretty bad, and they basically take their house over and change their lives or what's left of it. And it's it's a pretty dark fucking film. I'd like to see a little more of your take, because I've seen this film a lot. This isn't a remake. The remake was made 10 years later by the same director in the same house. People call it a shot-for-shot remake. I don't think there's such a thing as a shot-for-shot. It's definitely a scene-for-scene remake, and a lot of the shots are the same. It's filmed with the same script, but done in English. I think the main reason Haneke did that is I think he wanted to get his point across to an American audience, and he felt that his 1997 film didn't cross over enough. and what from what I read, he always wanted to make this an American film, but due to budgets and things of that nature, he kept it in his home country, Austria. It just made more financial sense at that time.
Oh.
But tell me a little bit what you felt about this film.
So, I mean, I was thinking, like, when was the first inkling that things were not going, or like things were just starting off on the wrong foot? I think it was when that first, is it Paul? Is the first one we're introduced to? He shows up with the neighbor, the husband of the neighbor next door at the nearby vacation home. And they're not within, like, it seems like they're not even within shouting distance, these houses. They seem like on like very distant ends of this lake. And he comes over with him like he's introducing this kid who's helping. I'm not sure what is there like some kind of management station that's supposed to have teenagers to help the local residents or something? Like, I didn't understand who are these kids posing as to begin with, but I mean, kids, they look like, 1920 maybe at the most, but the actors are probably a little older than that. But he's not welcomed by the dog. There's your first sign. The dog doesn't like him. German Shepherd. I love German Shepherds, so that was also a sad scene.
Well, if you also remember, during that dialogue, he asked him, "How long have you been here?" And he's like, "I got here last week." And then he asks the kid, "How long have you been here?" And they kind of stumble over each other, and they have to correct.
Oh.
So it's one of those. That's kind of classic when somebody's trying to lie and you have two people involved.
Yeah, the friend of who is it? The George is the father, the patriarch of this family, the family that we are learning about. He is. Oh my God, what was I about to say? That was so weird. So he's friends with the neighbor, and so he's talking with him, and he's introducing Paul, the teenager, and he just seems very stiff in what he has to say. And I'm assuming at this point the other kid who he keeps calling Fatty, what's his name? Tom? Is it Thomas?
Well, they go by multiple different names, but it's Paul and Peter. They also call each other Tom and Jerry, Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah, Beavis. Then later on, I heard him say Beavis. I'm like, wait, what? I thought his name was something else. So, so I assume that the other one is like waiting for a signal if things should go wrong to like kill the wife or something back at the other house. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because how many opportunities could you have easily just he's kind of a scrawny looking kid. Easily you just overpower him and freaking break his neck or something, just like be done with him. I was really just kind of like, just do something, try anything. But nobody was, everyone felt like they were just so overpowered by these two. I wasn't a huge fan of that. At so many points, I came up with so many ways to just kind of like, whatever. Because the way things turned out at the end, it's just like, did this really need to happen? Like, I think we could have gotten away with some maimings and maybe some lost limbs, but I don't think there needed to be any loss of life, really. But yeah, so the dog...
Well, I think that was the whole point.
What?
If you look at it just from the plot structure, you can find a lot of things like that, but the overall point of this film is that none of that really matters. The plot of the film doesn't really matter and what Haneke's trying to say. He's just trying to open up people's eyes to how violence is portrayed in film and how the audience perceives it.
Oh, I see. That's why that fourth wall part where he's like, people want an ending. They want to be comfortable with the plot or something. What does he say again? I forget.
Well, it starts off with the opening scene, how the music changes. So there's something. It goes from classical music to like a hardcore punk death metal.
Yeah.
and it just really throws you off. Like it's just so strange how he does that. But the first, what do you say, half hour, the first act of this film is very, very slow.
Yeah.
but that's totally intentional. What Haneke is trying to say, he's trying to point at how films of this nature, it's all bullshit in the first half hour of these films. They try to do some character development, which in most thrillers and slashers is usually subpar. And it doesn't matter. You don't really get invested in a lot of these characters. So that's why he makes it so slow. He's pointing at the structure of these types of films, and he's almost doing a really perverse parody.
I was going to say,
happens.
so and is this whole thing just a parody then?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a parody. He's using this type of plot structure to make his point that most of us are only watching this for the violence. And you see it just a perfect example of how he's subverts these tropes. If you remember the close up of the knife when they're on the boat.
Yeah.
And when you usually have that shot, and it's almost a really cliched thing, you know something's going to happen with that later on.
Yeah.
When we get to the movie, at the end of the movie, it doesn't. It was just a total red herring.
Yeah.
But where you really get to it is when you get to the fourth wall breaks. And from my count, there's at least 4 of them in the film.
Counting the last scene at the end?
Yeah.
I think I counted 3. There was the 2 times he's in the house looking at the camera, and then at the end, I don't remember the 4th. But,
we'll get into it. Yeah, I think I have them all listed.
So go from there. So he's introducing Paul to George, or I'll take the next segment.
Yeah.
And he goes on into he sends Tom ahead, or whatever his name is at the time, and he knocks on the door to speak to, what's the wife's name?
Gerda, is it? And it's a German name.
Anyway, she's on the phone briefly just before that, and
it's Anna. The other one's Gerda.
Anna.
Yeah.
And she's talking to some people, and this is like that. I guess now I start to see the tropes you're talking about, where she's talking to the friends who she's like, oh, why don't you come over later? Oh yeah, in an hour or 2 or something. And like, oh, so we have an idea, like, oh, if this family is in trouble, someone's going to show up later on to save them or something. But then it's kind of left open-ended because we don't know if those friends are ever coming over. And Tom eventually makes his way into the house with permission, and he's asking for eggs from the neighbor, and he doesn't know why she needs the eggs, what she's making. And he's very insistent on getting these eggs, and she graciously offers. When he walks away the first time, there's an accident. He drops them on the floor. She's very, what's the word?
Cordial.
She's cordial about it. She's like, oh, that's fine. It's not a big deal. And then the next time, he ends up walking outside the door, and I guess the dog scares him, and he drops the eggs again.
Well, and you forgot a little important part there.
Oh, the phone.
He drops the phone into the sink that's full of water.
Yeah, he has a little "oh no" or "uh-oh" moment, and he bumps the cordless phone. There's no cell phones. This is from 1997, so they don't have cell phones. He bumps the cordless phone into the what it looks like dishwater or something, and she's at this point a little upset and pissed off, and asks him nicely to get out of the house, and he leaves with the second set of eggs, and then she hears a rumble going on out there. And it turns out he's dropped the eggs outside, and now Tom and Paul are both inside the house. And there's just this uncomfortable way that they speak, and it's as if they don't care about what she's saying. They're just continuing with this little banter, like he sees the golf clubs. Oh, what great golf clubs. Oh, it looks like he's going to have a good advantage or something tomorrow during the golf game. And then the other one chimes in, oh, Paul loves golf. And he's like, we wouldn't mind if I went and tried this out, right? And he takes a ball and a golf club out. And that whole time, there's just this uneasy kind of tension, the way they don't care about, like, whether it's her personal space or her kind of like thinning emotions when it comes to wanting them around. Like she's starting to get rubbed the wrong way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and he goes out there, and you see the shot of the dad and the son. They're looking over a sailboat, just doing some light prep to it. Just nothing major. They're not about to go out on it, but you hear the dog barking incessantly, and then you hear the dog yelp, and silence. So that's what draws them back into the house. And at that point, they've gotten more pushy with the mother. And when father and son walks in, she's kicking them out, telling them to leave. And they won't leave. And then she asks George, the father, to kick him out of the house. And he kind of played like the kind of a dick move there, like kind of like not just having your wife's back. He wants to know the whole story.
Yeah, he was trying to be like, well, what happened? Like, tell me what happened in front of her. And then she's like, whatever, you know what I want. I'm out of here. And so she just like takes her son to the room with her, right? And they leave the room entirely.
Now the son stays back because
does he witness?
Yeah, so they get in a conversation with George, and George asking them to leave finally at this point, and they talk back, smart off to him, and George slaps Paul across the face. So Paul takes that golf club and whacks him right in the leg with it, and Georgie Jr. sees this, and they have to restrain him because he's starts hitting them, and he's a little kid, so it's not causing any type of damage.
Yeah. Did they ever say his age? Like a 9-year-old or something? Just for
Yeah, I would think 8, 9 years old, somewhere around there. But at this point, this is when you start to see the real reason that Peter and Paul are inside this house. And one thing that I'll say, and this is a theme throughout the whole film. All the violence is the camera turns away from it, except for one instance that we'll talk about later on. But you don't actually see the direct hit with the golf club. You don't see much of the violence at all.
Oh yeah, throughout the whole movie, right? Yeah.
And people will tell you how violent this film is. But yeah, most of it's done off camera, and the camera on purpose does not show the violence, and there's an artistic reason behind that. It's not just because they don't want to show it. But so this is when Paul starts talking about hey, look, I still have this golf ball. Any reason? Can you here's a question. Why do you guys think I still have this golf ball? Because he was supposed to go out there and hit the golf ball.
Right.
And so Peter's like, has to be the one to answer as well, because you didn't hit it. He's like, well, I hit something. If I didn't hit the golf ball, what did I hit? And in both this and the remake, this is such a powerful part of acting, because it shows George and Anna's face, and you can kind of tell George is just in pain. He's not really getting what Peter and Paul are saying.
Right.
But Anna starts to realize, where the fuck is my dog?
Rolfie.
So they go outside, and this is when we get the fourth wall break. They're doing kind of like the old school you did with your kid, hot, cold, hot, cold.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
And he looks directly back at the camera, and just with this little shit-eating grin.
Ew, his face annoyed me though. I was like, oh, yeah.
So Anna finds the body of the dog inside of their car. And they don't flip out that much about that.
No, they don't. I mean, I think Anna's reactions toward everything she experiences in this movie, it was, I mean, okay, so there are some people who respond to things in a very silent, kind of traumatic experience. You know what I mean? Like they experience things and they just don't react. I get it, but I kind of I mean, when we get to that point, I guess I'll explain where I was upset a bit that things didn't turn out differently. But
Do you think that could be a cultural difference too?
yeah, definitely. I mean, in terms of
German,
how they dealt with each other to begin with, like,
not to categorize it, but German, Austrian people, they seem a lot more reserved than us American folks.
oh yeah, I mean, if anyone, Hitler is a very, he was known for his reservations.
But I think Americans tend to be a little more emotional than a lot of our European counterparts.
It's so emotional. It's true. It's true though. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
I was like, yeah, I'm German. We've dealt with a lot. A dead dog, I can handle that one.
Yeah, the French have all their like endless cigarette smoking scenes, and they talk to each other so softly about serious matters.
So after this, they bring the family into the living room.
Mm.
Dad's incapacitated, pretty much. His
With
leg
a
is...
bad knee. I mean, if you're telling me it's a parody, then fine. Really, all logic goes out the window, and I'm supposed to just take it as is. Because I'm like, it's your knee. Okay, got it. I mean, try anything, but like you said, it's a parody of sorts, so fine.
Well, it's a commentary.
Yeah.
This brings us to the second fourth wall break and a very important part of the movie. This is when Paul starts discussing the bet.
Oh.
So the bet is, do you think who's going to be alive? Are you guys going to survive by 8 a.m. tomorrow? This is a big symbolic point as well. Because this is the end of the first act. And if you think about any thriller slasher film, this is right back to the audience. This is why he breaks the fourth wall. This is a very important part of the film because he also asked the audience, what do you think is going to happen? But that's what his commentary is. That's what all audiences do in these types of films, whether it's out loud or not. Most of us start thinking about who's the final girl, who's going to survive.
Right. Yeah, I get that.
So that's what he's really trying to say at that moment in time. Because again, we're watching this movie to see some people die, but we want that one person to root for. So he's asking us who are we going to root for?
Yeah, no, I didn't. It was so just strange. Every time we look at it, it's like, oh, gross. Like I was just, I felt like I was being judged every time he would look at the. I was like, ew. Like,
and I think that's the intention, and it's very unnerving how they do it too.
It's like, oh, you enjoy this. Like, look at you're watching. Like, oh, you're watching us terrorize them. Like, yeah, this is what you want to see, right?
Because if you think about it, generally fourth wall breaks are done more in comedic fashion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Look at Deadpool. I mean, how many fourth wall breaks does he do in that film? But it's usually funny. It's usually like a narration, lighthearted. But in this setting, it's very. Especially I would have to believe the first time seeing this, it's just like, what the fuck just happened? Like, this is just really, really tense. Why are they breaking the fourth wall?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's at those points when you start to kind of realize that, oh, this is not just a standard terrorizing kind of horror movie. Like, there's something else that he wants you to pay attention to, or there's something else to this movie. Like, there's a reason for it. And it was, I'm trying to think to the remake. I don't remember the wall breaks, but
yeah, it's same exact, same. It's to the T on those.
Oh, I'm sure they are. I don't remember. And I remember the actors clearly. And I was thinking, like, when I'd see some of the scenes, like, oh, I remember when he does this and that scene, and that sweater that she wears in the end. I remember that. Naomi Watts' character.
Yeah.
And I remember all those little scenes, and I was just thinking, like, wow, I got to see the remake now, just because I want to see the similarities and how they did with the remake. So I will be seeing that one for sure. But yeah, it was very judgy, his look, and I was like, ugh. gross. It just grossed me out because it's like, just do the movie. Stop checking on me. It's like, stop looking at me.
Well, and there's another important piece of dialogue around this time. George, the father, says something to the effects of, playing these games, why don't you just kill us? And Peter actually says, you should never forget the importance of entertainment, which it seems like almost a throwaway line, but it's just deep to the core of what Haneke is trying to get across here.
Right. The slow, drawn out torture.
Yeah. Well, that we're here to see the violence, and you got to do it in a specific way to keep us entertained. And this goes further. I guess the next biggest plot point is when they make the mother undress.
Okay.
They're just making conversations, if you can call it conversation. They're making they're just bantering back and forth, and they start. Paul starts talking about how fit and trim the mom is, and they're just like, oh no, she has jelly rolls, just back and forth, just banter. And Paul insists that the mother take her top off. Mm-hmm. The way that this was filmed is so important to the film as well. It's like anti-gratuitous because they just show the mom in a very close-up headshot as she's getting undressed.
Yeah.
He does not show any nudity, which in most films like this is a perfect time to show some tits.
Right.
And he totally refrains from it, and you just see the mother's emotion, her face as she's getting undressed. And they make her put her clothes right back on.
Yeah, exactly.
So
like everyone has this idea that something terrible is gonna happen, and it's like, no, he's like, all right, you can put it back on. I was like, oh, what?
And it's just, again, fucking with the audience. He's just really fucking with the audience. But yeah, that's what I would say to myself. That's the anti-gratuity gratuity and nudity of the film. Mm-hmm. Because most of its counterparts are going to show that. You did not tell me or remind me of the kid thing. Because when that happened, I was like, oh, gosh, David. The kid thing. That's coming up next anyway. What are you talking about when he put the bag over his head? No. I didn't want to skip ahead to it. It's because that's what we should say. He did put the bag over little Georgie's head while the mom was taking the shirt off. Yeah, he's like, what to keep morality safe or something. I forget for what reasons. Which may actually be a way to keep that child unseen, like actually unseen, like that actor unseen, to cover up his eyes for when that lady takes off her dress briefly. But no, that scene where the kid gets away, and then he gets the shotgun. Yeah, go ahead. Oh no, yeah. So from what I remember, he gets the shotgun, and he's keeping away from Paul for the most part, and he's upstairs, and Paul goes after him, and he gets the shotgun, and Paul is walking towards him. He sees him at the end of the hall, and he's this kid's also named George, or Georg is what the subtitles told me, because in Austria you don't have an extra E at the end. He sees him at the end of the hallway, and he's like, oh, you didn't, it's not primed. And so he cocks it back, and of course, because the killer gives you the tip, it's not going to be going, your way. And no. he clicks the trigger, and of course it's not loaded because Georgie doesn't know how to freaking load a gun anyway. You don't store guns loaded. And so he takes the gun from him, and they do eventually load it at some point. I don't remember them actually ever loading it. They're loading it on the couch. Okay. Peter loads it. Okay. Yeah, and then he brings it down. He's like, oh, your son tried to shoot me. Like, do you think that's appropriate? Like,
is this how you raised your son or something? It's just like God, the stuff they say, like I'm just like, oh my God, what is happening in this movie? Okay. And they're just so like torn. If nothing else, it's not even his knee anymore, or like the fact that they could die. It's just the constant banter. Like they're just constantly talking to them. It's like they're just talking them to death, and they're just
like, just kill us already.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. I feel like that's when the father was like, "It's like, what are you doing? Just kill us. Let us go, or kill us." And then he gets up. Paul gets up too. He's like, "I'm hungry." And he's like, "Can you guys make us something?" And then he's like, "I'll just get it myself," or something. He goes to the kitchen, and that's when the camera stays with Paul. And while Paul is making a sandwich, he's spreading his mayo and stuff, whatever they have in Austria. I don't know if it's mayo, but he's spreading his mayo, and we hear some kind of rumble going on in the living room, and at least one shot goes off on the shotgun, and then there's no more commotion. And at all this time, he's not really like, he's sure he's heard it. Like we see him kind of like tilt an ear in that direction, but he just kind of goes about making his sandwich, and then he just calmly comes back, and he's like, "Oh, well, we don't even see anything at this point." At this point, when he leaves the kitchen, the shot goes to a TV with splattered blood on it, and he's just talking to Peter in the background, saying, "Oh, what have you done? Now she won't talk to us anymore." Isn't that what he said?
Well, he tells him how bad timing it is.
Oh.
Which that is a line for the audience. That again is pointing back is you're not supposed to. That was bad timing to do that kill. You didn't prepare that properly, and it's a child. So he's pointing back at the structure of thriller films.
Yeah, because then when they end up, he's like, we're just gonna leave or something.
Yeah,
and they actually leave the house, and the camera comes out, and it's just this wide shot of the entire living room. It looks like the father is dead. We just see this two legs motionless on the ground, and he's an idiot because he's got his knees blown out, I guess, so he can't do anything. The mother is tied. Was she tied up to the chair? Was she just?
Yeah,
she was frozen in fear on the chair. Anyway, she was tied up, and the son is over there. We don't see his face, but we do see some sort of wound on the head, and there's some splatter near the head, and the legs are in a intertwined mess, not what people don't normally lay down in a position like. And it sits in that shot for at least a minute and a half, and just like
that is the most. It's such a hard shot to watch.
Yeah.
Because you're just sitting there, you start realizing I'm just watching these people who lost their son.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things, it feels more realistic because it's more of a shock thing. They're not sobbing and crazy emotional. It's like they really just can't believe what the hell just happened.
That was when I was like I get, that's what I was saying before, like Anna's reaction to everything. Like I get that it's like a fear kind of thing, but it just never went away. Like I was waiting for her to just start screaming and look more, I don't know, feel more normal, for her to be like, my son, or like, what just happened, or just like nothing. She doesn't break out and do anything then, but I don't know. Then whatever, the father starts moving after that for a while, and we're like, oh, he survived, thank goodness.
And they're trying to dry the phone out, but
yeah.
What I noticed most about this portion of the film is the plot just dies because the two killers are gone.
Yeah.
They're the main attraction. They're the reason that we're there to watch the film. And when they're not there, just like when they're not there at the beginning of the film, it's just nothing's going on. And then and I feel that's purposely done that way. You're almost, as the audience, like, we need these guys to come back because this is boring as fuck now.
Is it? I mean, did you hear director commentary that that's what he was going for?
I don't think Haneke. I don't think he does like the whole "I'm going to tell you about my art" thing. I know he wrote a piece about this, but that's more about how he felt about violence. I don't think he's done broken down scene by scene, but that's what I get from it. Because in my opinion, the killers are the artists, his representation of the creators, almost godlike figures.
I mean, they're like, oh, right. That reminds me of that scene. So at one point, the shotgun is on the table. This is before the scene where we are in the movie. She grabs the shotgun and she shoots Peter, killing him, which looks like killing him instantly.
Yeah.
And Paul freaks out. He's like, oh, what did you do? And he's like, where's the remote? Where's the remote? And I'm like, what? And he grabs the remote and he hits rewind. And he starts rewinding the movie to like the dialogue just before she does that. And where he changes the scene, and just as she grabs it, he moves it away. And it's like, oh, okay. So there's no escape from any of this.
So that's there's 5 fourth wall breaks.
Yeah. Wait, does he?
The third one comes
to us. Does he?
The third one comes right before the scene you're talking about.
Okay.
And because I believe again, Georgie mentions something like, "I wish you would just finish this and go on your way." He looks at the camera and he says something along the lines, "Do you think it's enough? Don't you want a real ending?"
Yeah, exactly.
Then it goes into the remote scene, and that scene, that's a lot of people hate that scene. I see it as brilliant because what he does, he takes that cathartic feeling like, oh, they're getting back at the bad guys.
Right.
It just, you get it, and he just snatches it away from you. And you never realize that these guys had like these special powers. Like they had that much control. And that's why I say they're the creators. They're his stand-in for the artist or for God. No matter what you do, they're the ones who they are going to make the story how they want the story to be. No one else has any control. And that was just such a big FU to the audience that I thought it was brilliant. And I watched this. I just watched a remake again the other day, but I just got the Criterion version of the original, and I watched that maybe 3 weeks ago, and that part pissed my wife off so much. And she was saying like they just took all that away, and I was like, that was the whole point,
right?
and it worked because it did piss people off. But then if you go back and you're analytical about it, it's like he wanted. If an artist makes you feel an emotion and you feel the emotion that he wanted to elicit out of you, that's a pretty competent artist.
Yeah. No, I definitely felt, I don't know if it was anger because, like I said, I didn't realize it was, I mean, I got that it was sort of a parody on horror movies because he kept alluding to, oh, don't you want more? And he kept looking at us and all that. I felt that, but I didn't know how much of an intentional work it was in that direction. So when it happened, I didn't feel like, oh, you son of a bitch, like, oh, you took it away kind of thing. I was just so depressed because I was like, oh, shit. At that point, I realized, like, well, they can do anything then.
And that's the only actual on-screen violence you see.
Oh, that's true.
Is Peter being shot. Everything else is done off camera or the camera turns angle. So he gives you that and then just snatches it right away.
Oh yeah, that's true. I think that's the only time he gets. That's funny. Yeah, and then he takes it away. Yeah, I think so. When you explain it that way, I feel like. Do you think he was caught between creating creating the horror movie and also making fun of it or making light of it, of all the tropes? Because I feel like there were at times when he started taking himself seriously when he was telling the story. Like there was a lot of intentional tension, and he almost enjoyed that storytelling aspect of it. And then maybe he caught himself and started, oh wait, no, this is the trope, and then he started poking fun at it, because there were some parts where I'm like, oh no, it's starting to turn into a story again, and then it wasn't the joke.
I actually read this thing. There's a book called Paradise Lost. It's a classic
I loved it.
novel.
I read it a long time ago.
And if you know about that book,
John Milton.
John Milton, he wrote the angels and stuff, and they're so one-dimensional in that book. But the way that he writes Satan is just so vast. Now, he wrote this book as a religious point of view. But what happened is that the devil was such a compelling character that it actually negated what he was trying to get across. And I think, and I agree with what this critic said, this film kind of falls into that. Haneke was trying to make an indictment about violence in film, but made a really fucking violent film.
But like you said, I don't think how much violence was really in it for it to be, noted as a violent film. There really isn't. It's that one scene. I would say forget.
Well, there's a lot of intended violence.
Yeah. I would say that one scene with the kid is what I've called in the past like a graphic aftermath scene. You didn't see what happened, but you just see the scene after it all's done, and you're like, oh God, that's awful. And you just have to like imagine in your head. You're forced to think, oh, this is what's happening. That happened, and you just piece together like a detective the whole scene what happened.
Yeah, by making a film that he was kind of anti the genre, he made a classic in that genre.
Yeah. Did he say that? Well, he didn't. In what you've heard him say, did he ever feel that was his intention, to create something in this space as well as insult it to a degree?
He said he was never intended on making a genre film.
Oh.
And that basically it was basically his indictment against people watching films just for the violence. And I'll be the first one to say I love a good slasher film. And yes, I'm watching it mainly for the violence. and I'm just being perfectly honest. I mean, I enjoy the art of special effects, things of that nature. I look at it a little deeper than just a casual viewer. But would you want a slasher film where everything's done off camera and there's no violence? Right. Who the hell would ever watch that? And so I understand where he's coming from. And the portrayal of violence has desensitized us, is what I think he's going towards. But we're already desensitized. It's already done and over with.
You're starting to sound like our politicians, David. That video games and movies are what's causing violent.
Being desensitized and actually hurting people is different realms of reality to me. Just because seeing violence doesn't bother you anymore doesn't mean you should be violent. But hey.
Yeah, no, I definitely watch or at least look for these kinds of scenes in movies, because I do appreciate, like you said, the special effects, the makeup, and how real can they make it look. I really hate seeing when it pops up as like CGI in my face. I'm like, oh, that's so stupid looking. Like in some of the newer Saw movies, there's either no actual gore or they're like stupid looking CGI. I'm like, oh, gross. Like I'd rather them just put it off screen then. But it's definitely like the high point of the movie are those scenes when it's like, oh gosh, that looks so real. I remember still watching the first time I saw Saw, and he has just got that saw and he's going through his own leg, and like, oh, I remember having to look away because I was like, wow, that scene obviously is a prosthetic. I understand it's fake and this guy exists today. He's an actor with his leg. But even knowing that it's a movie, there's just the realism of it, like just the actor doing this motion, this scene, and the way that he's doing it, the way it's depicted. Wow, just, I don't know, like I just really love horror in that way. And I would never do that to myself or to someone else. So I don't believe that when people are like, oh, it makes you want to hurt other people. Like, no, I don't want to see other people do this to themselves. I didn't want to see that guy do it to himself. I don't want to see anybody doing this.
If anything, I think it might have the opposite effect.
I'm sure it could.
Like
the
it could
problem
almost
is that
be.
I think some people actually do want to see this stuff in real life.
But I think it could be cathartic to those dark thoughts that you have.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a way to
release.
release. Yeah, it's a way to release some of your darkness in a fantasy world, as opposed to actually hurting people.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way they describe what fetishes and things like that, right? Like pooping on your loved ones.
Just so you don't poop on other people.
Yeah, exactly. No. Like when you get to watch these strange pornographic videos of like, what's the name for that? I always get it wrong.
Scat.
No. Stanley Steamer. That's the company. We do not sponsor Stanley Steamer. No, Cleveland Steamer. It's called a Cleveland Steamer, where you poop on someone. Hopefully they have like saran wrap or something on them, I think is the setup. And then you just poop on them, and it gets everyone hot and bothered. I don't know what that's about.
And that's big in Germany, too. I don't understand that.
Is it? Hitler was
German poop porn is like its whole thing.
Ew, gross. That brings us to our next video, 2 Girls, 1 Cup. That'll be next week's
we'll
topic.
do a play-by-play of that.
Oh, gross.
But
I don't. Who recommended that video to me in high school? Gross. Do not look it up, anybody.
But this film for me, and I will say, between this and the remake, I feel the acting in the remake is better. I mean, you got Naomi Watts and Tim Roth, Michael Pitt, who's a pretty strong actor too. He did Boardwalk Empire. I really liked him in that show. And I think the acting was better. The one thing I didn't like in the remake as opposed to the original, that shot we were talking about, that static shot, there was a lot more movement and stuff, and it didn't stay long in the remake.
Okay.
That's the main difference in between the two, is that shot. Of course, some of the dialogue has been more Americanized, make it seem a little bit more realistic.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it's the same movie.
Okay. Yeah.
But
I remember seeing it. I saw that one. Gosh, I don't know. It must have been. It actually came out. I think a couple years after it came out. I want to say, and I remember Naomi Watts in there, and I remember that main guy. Oh God, what's the main kid's name? I guess the guy who plays Paul.
Paul, he's played by Michael Pitt.
Oh, Pitt. Okay, that was the guy you said. Yeah, I've seen him in a number of movies and stuff, and he's a good cast for that. Now that I see who they're trying to replicate in this, I was like, wow, yeah, he's got that creepy look to him.
And he's a little more animated than Paul in this film. Paul was a lot more deadpan, and he was a little more animated in that.
I feel like that's a German thing. Like a lot of these foreign movies, there's not a lot of like huge facial expression.
Yeah.
They deliver so much more in their dialogue and just these small micro expressions, the way they do it, just like you're just constantly like staring, waiting for something. Like not like with American movies, like how you said, just over emotional. Everyone just like screaming and have to like overact every scene.
Like the scene with Naomi Watts when she has to take her clothes off.
Mm-hmm.
Her facial expressions are brilliant. In that scene, she did that scene much better. But just to go off,
we should have had Alex on this. He loves Naomi Watts. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, Alex, you're here in spirit with us.
But
You okay?
how the film ends is they kind of do like an eeny meeny miny mo type thing.
Oh yeah.
They give Anna a choice, what weapon, who gets killed. They got a knife or a gun, so they end up killing George, and they take Anna to the sailboat. Earlier in the film, when they were out at the boat, a neighbor came by and they were just kind of talking. This is after the boys were already there. And they made, hey, you say anything, shit's going to hit the fan. But one of the neighbors who was just across the water, Paul even asked, hey, where's your house at? Is it right over there? So that plays towards the end of the film. But they go to the boat. They go out on the water. They actually start having a discussion about fiction versus reality, antimatter versus matter.
Yeah, black holes.
And Paul asked Peter what time it is, and it was like 7:20 or something. They still had a good amount of time left.
Yeah, 8:30, and they said that, well, she still had like almost an hour left.
Yeah, he just pushes her right into the water. She's tied up, so obviously she drowns.
Wait, but why does she drown? Because she could still surface. She can just paddle herself like her legs.
Yeah, up all night, tied up, trying to swim. Probably be pretty difficult.
Okay, Haneke, if you say so.
So they take the boat to this neighbor's house, and they start to cycle over again. They ask for eggs.
Right.
And that's where the final fourth wall break is, because he gives us a nice little shit-eating grin as the last shot of the film.
And then music blares up again in our face.
But this film, this is a 10 out of 10 for me. This is one of my favorite films ever. I give it 10 out of 10 to both of them, just because they're pretty much the same film. But it is one of those films, if you go into it surface level and don't think about it, it's not going to be very fulfilling.
Yeah, I feel like if you're just walking into it, you gotta know. Well, I don't know. Like I didn't know anything about it. I feel like I didn't hate it, but I don't know if I loved it. I feel like after you explained a little bit more about what the director's intentions and stuff were, that it made a lot more sense. And now it makes me really want to watch the remake. I don't think I can watch the original one again, because it was just the European filmmaking. I don't know if it's European or just foreign films. Sometimes just like they just love to draw things out. Just like some of the scenes is like, oh no, keep going, just keep going, don't fall asleep.
Well, I think the remake is 2 minutes longer.
Oh, great! Is it in the credits though? So I loved it because of the good filmmaking, but I don't watch a lot of movies over and over, but I do want to see the remake again. It's been a long time since I've seen that one, and I like to see a new set of actors do the roles, so that'll be fun. I do want to see that one again. But yeah, I liked it. Now that after we talked about it, I like it a lot more. I can see a lot of what you were saying and how, like, why this was a huge favorite for you. Because when you first said, like, oh, finally got Funny Games and Criterion and stuff, I was like, yeah, okay, that was it's a great movie, dude. Like, yeah, it was a good movie. I see why you like it a lot.
When people say it's a very disturbing movie, I don't get that from it.
I think what people
I've seen
remember,
a lot of fucked up shit, so
yeah,
maybe I'm desensitized.
When you think back to it, depending on how long ago you've seen it, like if you asked me, well, like you said, when you asked me, like, did I see it before? I was like, yeah, I remember it being a little messed up and stuff. I remember they terrorized the family. And it's like, oh yeah. If someone asked me if it was graphic, I would say probably, yeah, it was probably graphic. Especially just seeing the cover. There's a kid covered in that bag on the DVD cover. But if you actually see it and pay attention to what they're showing, like, yeah, there's nothing actually graphic except for that still and the shotgun scene. There's nothing else there.
I think it gets that how people think Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a very graphic film. They just shot it in such a way where you felt everything they intended you to feel without actually seeing it.
Yeah, I think your mind sort of just fills in the gaps, is because you know what happened off camera, and you're feeling it's like, oh my god, it's so terrible. But I guess that's more power to the filmmaker, right? That's brilliant.
But yeah, if you've never seen this film, if you want something that's going to make you think, and I had to see this film a few times to really get a full understanding, or at least what my interpretation is, which really that's all that really matters, how you personally interpret a film. Because most directors, there are some, but most of them don't want to tell you how to interpret their films, which I like. You don't want a filmmaker to tell you what you're supposed to think about their film. Maybe give you a little bit of insight of what they were thinking, but I'd rather a filmmaker leave it a little more open-ended for the audience to draw their own conclusions.
Yeah, I would recommend it. I would definitely not recommend it to the faint of heart, because there are a couple of scenes, and the kid and stuff. So if you can stomach a little bit, then it's definitely an interesting watch. It's not like, especially if you've seen the typical horror movie kind of formula, it plays on that, and it's a funny movie. This funny game.
It's
games.
If you think about it, Cabin in the Woods has a lot of the same themes. They just
sure. Oh yeah, Cabin in the Woods is the same thing. It's a parody of movies.
Yeah, they embellish the tropes as this subverts the tropes.
And everyone gave I remember when Cabin in the Woods came out, it was like, "Oh, it's brilliant, it's genius." And I'm like, "Okay." It was really fun. I don't know how genius it was. It was really fun. It was funny, and especially when Chris Hemsworth. Oh, this is a spoiler within a spoiler. Yeah, that whole scene when he's like supposed to save the day.
I think the film would have been a lot more successful in my eyes is if they held back like the scenes of the guys outside of what was going on in the movie.
Oh, like
if they left a little more
longer.
Yeah, held out longer. Because if you think about it, like in this film, they held out that fourth wall break a half hour into the film?
At least.
So you didn't know exactly what was going on, that this was kind of a farce until then. And I think that Cabin in the Woods, if they would have held out and you wouldn't been able to dissect the film so easily in the first act, yeah. I thought it was a good film. It's not a great film, but I enjoyed it.
They introduced those office workers early, and they don't explain the connection between the two, but you see these completely contrasting scenarios and environments. Like there's these office workers and they're working in some lab and some typical kind of business scenario, and then there are these kids in the woods, and then gradually like they slowly kind of stitch together these two stories, and like, what the fuck is going on? And then they start talking like, oh wow, this is really weird.
Yeah, if they would have kept it where we didn't know there was another subtext to the plot until later on and worked it in, I think it would be more powerful.
Yeah, and I remember the teaser trailer to it they did it really well. They didn't explain a lot of that, but then there was a full trailer release, and they said something, and it gave it away. I'm like, damn it! This smells like trailers. So
I haven't watched that in a while. I might have to go back and see that.
It came on TV. Do you remember the ending? I loved the ending.
Yeah.
That was funny.
But yeah, go check out Funny Games, and this is one. I think we talked about this before because we were talking about remakes. This is one where it doesn't really matter too much if you watch the original or the remake. It's done by the same director, same script, everything. So there was, to tell you the truth, there was no reason to have the remake, but it is more accessible.
I was going to say the newer one might be easier to find.
Actually, it isn't.
No,
believe it or not, I think it's out of print.
Prime Video, or was it?
I mean, you can get a streaming for probably rent it for $3.
Yeah, it's there for rent for $3. It's not even on free for streaming.
But if you're trying to buy a physical copy, it's out of print.
Oh, okay.